I'll give you a brief intro on why we created Taipy in the first place. So maybe a little word about our background. We have been developing AI applications for many years, over 25 years in different businesses and large companies in general. I come from a company called Alog. Alog was acquired in 2009 by IBM, and we have been developing applications all over the world for large companies. A few years back, we started to want to develop everything in Python because we like Python, like most of you, I suppose. So we discovered that there were some issues with Python, and most of the applications we have been building in the past are business applications where you have end users on the other side using the software. So that's the reason why we developed Taipy, is to really help Python people who develop with Python to be more successful with this kind of applications. So as I said, most of the system we have been involved with are AI system, advanced systems, where you have end users. So in the past, we used to call them decision support system. I think we need a new name for this kind of application. But in general, Taipy has been built for advanced software, but also for simple application, just data presentation, all the way to the complex AI kind of system. And I take AI here as a very wide range of complex algorithm, basically. One of the things also that end users do interact not only through a graphical interface, but interact with algorithms. So they need really to play with this algorithm. They will not take for granted any solution. So that's also something that needs to be remembered for the types of application we are looking at. What we have seen over the years, and in fact, there was a report from Gartner a few years back, which confirmed that 85% of the pilots developed in Python, they do stay pilot. They are not really making into the full application. Sometimes it's because the pilot doesn't succeed, the ROI is not there, but sometimes it's for other reasons. It could be because of cost. You have built a pilot, you have invested in a pilot, and suddenly you need to build a full application, and instead of expecting a few K of development, it's cost you like 600K, $1 million really to develop the whole thing. It's also about resources. You may need somebody to develop the graphics in JavaScript, somebody who develops a backend, you need a DevOps, you need this and this, so you end up with a team of 5 people. So we wanted to change that. So Taipy, we are a startup. Taipy is open source. But we come from an unusual angle. We come from the large company background. So Taipy has been developed with large companies. So it has been developed with companies like McDonald's and its software partner, Knowledge Touch. It has been developed with Intermarché, which is the largest retailer in the world, and other companies, large companies in Asia, and Europe, and the US. Because we wanted the product to be really well tested. Of course, now it's available for the community. And one of the projects I wanted to introduce here to show the power of Taipy is really this example where we come up with a project which was initially sized at 600K, 4 people, and this is what this retailer was looking at. So it's a typical, large projects. It was about cash flow prediction. It's a machine learning project, but they needed, a full interface because the end users were the treasurer and the CFO, basically, the financial group. They did that instead in a few months with less people. Of course, this is the first release, and for about 60K, 80K. So that's the kind of saving that you get by using Taipy. And having that allows you, and this was a kind of a breakthrough in this company. Now they can really think of building more applications and be much more successful with their project. Okay, so why did we develop Taipy. First, Taipy is a package, Python package. You do pip install Taipy. It's composed of two different components, Taipy Core and Taipy GUI. These are precisely the two areas we felt Taipy needed, some new software, some new ideas. So that's why we came up with these two packages. Taipy GUI. So when you look at the landscape, we have all heard about all these nice graphical packages. Some of them are really very nice, but they are what I call graphical widgets. So they give you a lot of different types of charts and graphics and so on. So I'm talking about Matplotlib, Seaborn, Altair, Bokeh, and so on. But this doesn't make a full graphical interface where you need a lot of interactions, several pages, and yeah, it's really okay for a Jupyter cell to output a particular chart, but doesn't make it for end users. On the other side of the scale here, of course you can develop your graphical interface with JavaScript, or you can develop it with Plotly or Plotly and so on, but you need dedicated people. You need people who understand graphic, and you still need to code quite heavily. We didn't want that. We wanted a tool that is really accessible to anybody. So there was one software we looked at also, which was called Streamlit, which is quite popular, but again, it couldn't meet our requirements in terms of scalability, in terms of some of the features that it was missing. I'm a little bit more precise here about this. So for instance, we wanted to have an efficient graphical event loop. This is a way to manage the graphical events. That was important. We didn't find this in tools like Streamlit. Asynchronous call, when you have a long run, I don't know if you launch a long execution, you don't want to be stuck in your graphics, right? You want to be able to, so you need asynchronous call. So in Taipy, you have this capability to do this kind of this choice when you click on a button and you run a long execution. User input for tables in particular. We want application where not only for read-only kind of thing, but you have users who can enter data directly in tables or in different fields and be able to be efficient doing that. We wanted also a library that can be used for inside your IDEs, your favorite IDEs, PyCharm, Visual Code, and so on, but also inside notebooks. So notebooks is, we wanted to go beyond, again, just a cell where you see the chart. Now you can, from the notebooks, you can really create a nice application and spin off a web app from your notebook. And we wanted also Taipy GUI to be part of this Markdown language, which is really about presenting text and images and stuff. So Florian will be showing that to you, and also support for large data visually. The second part is actually about the core. So for the core, Florian will be showing that. We have pipeline orchestration that comes with it. We'll go through this part. So we wanted, again, we couldn't find what we wanted inside the software. So sorry, this is a mistake I've made here. This is Taipy Core, so we'll be changing that online. Sorry about this. Taipy Core is actually going beyond against the existing packages because we wanted to have scenario management, the capability to compare scenarios, easy way to do caching, data scoping, versioning, not of your code, but of the pipeline itself. So the cycles, when you work with real companies, very often they have cycles. Cycles is an option inside Taipy, but if you do, for instance, a sales forecast for McDonald's, every single week you need to produce a forecast. So you've got this kind of, business cycles, and you need to organize your runs within these cycles. In Taipy, all of this is kind of ready to be used, and you can easily, for instance, see the effect over time of your different runs across your cycles. And this is, you know, a line of code to do that. And again, the learning curve needed to be simple. We couldn't find that in the existing Python landscape. A lot of it was either very complicated, like a tool like Airflow, or we needed like 2, 3 or different packages to have what we wanted. So that's just the objective of Taipy Core. Okay, so I will hand over to Florian, who will be going into some coding for you and showing you the inside of Taipy. So I'm making you the presenter.
Great. Share my screen. It's working, I guess. So we go to this. So I hope you're seeing all my screen. And so what I'm going to do is show you Taipy GUI. So how you can create really easily an application. So the goal would be to have this Markdown syntax, create visual elements, and create like a very simple application just to show you the basics. And then we will go to Taipy Core, so how you can manage pipelines with all of these features of parallelism, caching, scoping, and some that we will see when we are on Taipy Core. So, okay, well, for my background, I am just a data scientist, so I don't know anything about CSS, HTML, JavaScript. I don't know how to create a web application. So I'm using Taipy GUI in order to do that. What I know is just Python, and I know the Markdown syntax. So the Markdown, for example, this is an hashtag, it will create the title. Demo is between stars, it will create italic like demo. So what I've done just before, I have pip install Taipy, and now I am able to use Taipy GUI and Taipy Core inside, well, just a Python environment. So what I'm doing is just importing Taipy GUI with this GUI class, importing some functions later, and then creating some string with this Markdown syntax that I will put in my GUI. What you see with your use reloader is just for demo, but I will not rerun again and again my demo, and the port is just my port. So what I'm going to do is just run this little script, and you will see that it's going to create my first web application with just a few lines of code. So this is why we say that Taipy GUI is low code. It's because with just a few lines of code, you can create your first application. I'm just going to do that, and now we'll see the changes. So I have Markdown, Taipy demo. Taipy demo is the title, demo is in italics. So I've created my first application. Now what I want to do is connect it to my Python environment. For example, I want to show this value that equals to 10. And to do that, I will need Taipy visual elements. Normally, we say that Taipy GUI is an augmented version of Markdown because we add this concept of visual elements inside Markdown. So if I want to show it, so value, I will create a Taipy visual element. So I will begin with info van pipe, and then I will put my Biden variable, which is value, and then the visual element that I want to show. So here I have binded value to my visual element, and the visual element that I want to show is just a text. I just want to see a text of value. As you can see, we have a lot of options here. So this is all the visual elements that have Taipy. So you can have also this for yourself. This is in fact a Taipy like extension in VS Code. So it is available. It is you can download it through VS Code. And like that, you can have all of the different visual elements with the autocompletion, with the syntax, and so on. And so I'm doing this and closing my visual element. So now I have value text, and I'm saving it. And if I reload my application here, I will have value 10, which is value. So it's working. Of course, here I cannot really change anything. It's not really dynamic, so I'm going to make it dynamic. To do that, I can create a slider, for example. So we'll just put this. The same thing. So value is again my binded variable. And now I want to create a slider. And I'm going to just refresh, and we will see a slider just appearing to the web page. And what is interesting is that if you're going to change this slider here, it's also changing the value automatically here. So there's this direct binding between value and value, but it's done automatically by Taipy. You don't have to do anything. It's just done basically by Taipy here. So don't have to write callbacks or unnecessary code. It's just done. Now what I want to do is
there was a bit of a delay. Maybe show again the slider moving.
Yeah, so it's moving 66, value 66, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Now what I want to do is just put a chart here, a chart with some data. So I'm just going to import some function that I've created, which is here. Don't worry about it. So this will create a list of cosine that will decay over time. So this is a list of cosine. I could also have like a dictionary, an NumPy array, a condensed data frame, doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm just going to have a list. And this list, I'm going just to pass it to my data. And now I want to show my data as a chart. So what I'm going to do is do data. This is now what I want to show, to modify, or well, this is my binary variable. And then I want to have a chart. So data chart. I'm just saving it and then refreshing it here. And now I have a chart. I'm just going to make it a bit bigger for you to see. And like this, we have this chart of cosine that is decaying over time. I can also zoom in, zoom out. In fact, if you know Plotly, this is Plotly behind the scenes. So you have all the properties of Plotly, you have all the types, all the like parameters of Plotly. In fact, we have a lot of different visual elements. So if I'm going to our documentation, you see all the visual elements like text, button, input, toggle, and so on. And this is charts, so these are the plotted charts. And you see all the different types that we have with all the documentation that comes with it. So you can look through it and use it for yourself. Going back to my application, and we're just going to continue the presentation. What will be really interesting is that when I'm moving the slider here, that is going to change my chart. So I want to do this now, and I will need a callback function. A callback function related to this slider. So how can I do this? Well, I'm just going to need this function. I'm going to explain. So this function, what it will do is that it will change my data with well, the state of my data. In Taipy, we are multi-user by design. So it means that you can have like different sessions, so different users on the same application, but with different values. So for example, if I'm going to do this, so I'm going to create another application, right? I have 10 and 10, but if I'm changing this, I have 50 and 84. So I have two different states. I have two different users, so two different states. This is how we manage it in Taipy. So here, what I'm going to do is just change the state of my data for my user based on the state of my value for my user. And so this function, I want to call it when the slider is going to change. So I'm going to do onChange equals slider changed. You see also the completion that we have. It's Taipy Studio, so this VS Code extension that we have created, where you see other properties of different like visual elements and what you can write in it. And now I can just save it and reload my page. And what you will see is that I'm changing my value slider. It's changing automatically my data. So what happens is I'm changing my slider, I'm changing my value. It's going to call this function slider changed. So it's going to do this, change the state of my data based on state.value, so the state of my value of my slider. And here we have created a full application, well, a little application that is interactive. Also, there's another way to do it, which is a bit simpler. So I'm just going to show you this. I can erase everything pretty much and put, in fact, this expression directly into my visual elements. So if you know a bit about Python, you know maybe about the f-string format with these curly brackets. So in fact, I'm just putting a Python expression directly into my visual elements that will return a list. And so it will have the same behavior as the callback. So I'm just loading it, and you will see, please. Yes. And you'll see that I'm changing this, changing the value is changing my chart. Why? Because Taipy will look for value in the default expressions and we reload, recalculate your Python expressions based on this, but in an efficient way. So we're not reloading every time all the page, all the code. We're just trying to reload what needs to be specifically reloaded. For example, if you know Streamlit or that reruns all the page, we are much better with interactivity. So with sliders, with buttons, like it takes much like lower time to do this. I also want you to show you some advanced features of Taipy GUI. So the first one will be about decimator. So this is this. Stop that. So decimator is something that we have created that will decimate your points of the chart, because we want to be able to display a large amount of points. So for example, 10 millions, 100 millions, but it will take a lot of time to put it in a chart, and it will take a lot of resources. So the goal of the decimator is to decimate the points, to filter the points in order to show it on your web application without changing the curve of your chart. So I'm going just to show you this. Maybe you will understand it a bit better with this decimator. So I have created, so I'm just putting some data, and this is my decimator. I want to have 1,000 points displayed. So all the other points will be filtered. And I will show you one without decimator and one with decimator, just for you to understand. So I'm going to show you that. So this one is without decimator. So I have 10,000 points, and you see, well, we have a lot of points. If I can zoom in, it's a bit laggy, but it's working. And the other one is with the decimator. Instead, as you can see, we have less points, but the curve is the same. So we have preserved the curve of the chart, but we are showing less points, but it doesn't really change anything. And if we zoom in, it's going to repopulate the points automatically, so we can zoom in and see really the curve of your chart. So it's a way in order to show like large data inside a web application, which is normally really hard to do because it takes a lot of resources of time to process. Here, you're just going to filter the data to make it readable, and also you're going to be able to zoom in, zoom out very easily like this. Yeah. Also,
so this kind of chart is used, for instance, we have customers who have IoT sensors and they get 1 million points, 2 million points. So that will make your Python crash basically if you try to load this into some graphics. So this is something that allows you to do that with time series. Like here, you have also similar things for cluster scatter plot charts basically. So that's extremely useful for customers. So what the algorithm does, it removes all the points that least modify the shape of the curve. So that's really the algorithm behind it.
Yeah, so it works for line charts, bar charts, scatter charts, and so on, just not for one that I've shown you. Another added feature that I wanted to show is the long callback. So how you can do tasks in an asynchronous way. So because in a lot of different applications, you submit something and it's going to take a lot of time, and your application will freeze, or a part of your application will freeze, and you will not be able to interact with it again. And in Taipy, you are able to not have this kind of behavior. So you can, in fact, create and launch a function, and it will not stop and freeze your application. And to do so, you need this invoke long callback. So this just means that you are going to have some kind of function that will take a lot of time. So that will be long. My function that will take a lot of time is pi approx. So I don't want to show you really what it is doing, but it's just going to approximate pi. And the number of iteration will be really, really huge. So like 20 million iteration to approximate pi. So it's just going to take a lot of time. and I don't want it to freeze my application, so I'm going to do this. So invoke long callback. And also at the same time, so it's not going to freeze the application. We can also have some kind of function that will be able to be called like every 2 seconds here. So this function, every status, will be called 2 seconds while PyApprox will be launched. So I can do things. I can maybe show the progression of this function. I can display things, and when it's done, I can refresh every elements that I want to refresh. And so what I'm going to do is just have this kind of button that will call my function, and then I will be able to show a chart of the error for my approximation. The goal here is not really to understand the code, but just the fact that we have this kind of option to do asynchronous function in order to not freeze your application. So here I have 20 million iteration. I can approximate pi, and you will see that I have some kind of like function that will be called every 2 seconds. And with this function, I can do whatever I want, like change the progression of something. And at the end, it's finished. It's telling me that it is finished. And I have like the error of my approximation. And so during this, my app was not frozen. It was not, I could interact with it, which is really rare for different packages where you are not able to do this. And the last thing that I wanted to show for Taipy GUI is that in fact, you can use Taipy GUI inside a notebook. So for example, here it is the explanation on how to create one of our application, one of our demo. So just a notebook to explain it. And you can, through this notebook, do the same things, a GUI with some MD and run it, and you will be able to create your application like this. And so I'm showing some charts of devs, recovered, confirmed. And so you can create your whole application through Jupyter Notebooks, for example, which is something that is also really rare in different other packages for GUI creation. So I think it's all for Taipy GUI, but also I wanted to show you at the end what a true Taipy GUI application looks like. So this is, for example, what you can get with Taipy GUI. So you create this kind of selectors, toggles. So this is a COVID dashboard. So I'm just going to display information for friends on the number of deaths recovered, confirmed for COVID. And you see the different waves. So it's interactive, like I said, so you can zoom in and zoom out. You have pie charts. Also, I have put some kind of map to show the different clusters of COVID. So you can interact with it, zoom in, zoom out again with the different clusters. This page is for the prediction of different COVID deaths. And this uses, in fact, Taipy Core, what I'm going to show you next. So you can create a scenario. So this is an instance of your problem. And then you can be able to submit your scenario with the different parameters that you have written. So for example, prediction date, the country on which you want to predict. And then you are able to see the different predictions. And again, I have like some world statistics. So again, with different like text, pie charts, line charts with toggles that I can interact with. So it's just one example. Another example here will be an optimization problem. So before we were more about like dashboarding with also predictions, ML. Here it is about an optimization problem where I want to satisfy some kind of demand for 2 products. And I can create also different scenarios. So this is Taipy Core, in fact. So I'm going to create different solutions to a problem, and then I can compare my solutions through a Taipy Core and Taipy GUI. So change, for example, the different sliders, create a new scenario, scenario 4, and then I can compare it here or with the different elements that I have in this page. Or I can go in this page and compare my scenarios, like scenario 4 versus scenario 2, different metrics, cost. So the goal here is not also to understand really what's going on, but just to show you how an application with Taipy GUI and Taipy Core can look like, and also the fact that this kind of application are built really quickly. So in fact, I'm the one that I've done it, and I've done it in just a few days. This kind of applications with all of these different pages and features. So now I think we are good with Taipy GUI, and we can go to Taipy Core and just explain to you what is Taipy Core, what is the use. So Taipy Core is here to, oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, I know. So Taipy Core is here to be able to manage and orchestrate pipelines. To have also this concept of scenario that I'm going to explain to you. And here what you can see is an example of ML pipeline that you can have in Taipy Core. So in fact, you can use Taipy Core for everything. It can be machine learning, it can be just a data flow, it can be just a way to organize your code, or it can be an optimization problem. It doesn't really matter, it's very generic, as you will see. So here, just an ML pipeline. And this ML pipeline, in fact, we can view it and we can configure it, we can edit it, like it's a graphical editor that we have created in VS Code. Again, this is like Taipy Studio. So I can show you, like, go here, Taipy, and you will have like Taipy Studio, and you can download it, and you will be able to create this kind of pipelines yourself, create data nodes, create tasks, and so on. So to explain to you what is this pipeline, so what it does, what are the blue, orange squares. So what you see as blue squares, so initial dataset, clean dataset, day, and so on, are what we call data nodes. So data nodes can be anything. They are just pointers to data. So it can be a CSV, it can be a Mongo, it can be an SQL, it can be JSON, it can be also just a Python property, like a Python object. So a date, a number, a dictionary, anything in fact. So you can also create your own data node, which we call generic data node, where you just put a read and write function in order to access your data that is really specific for your case. So just a representation of your data. And then the orange squares are tasks. So they take as inputs data nodes, as outputs data nodes, and behind it, it's just a normal Python function. For example, clean data here takes as input initial dataset, clean dataset, as you can see here, and the function behind it is clean data, which is this one. So this is a normal Python function. It has nothing to do with Taipy. You can use any Python functions for your task. So you can use PyTorch, TensorFlow, Pandas, NumPy, whatever, really. So you create your different data nodes, you create your different tasks, you put it in a pipeline, and then this pipeline, or like a bunch of pipelines, you put it into a scenario. So this is how you can configure your pipelines, your scenario, and then you will be able to use this scenario and to create instances of your configuration. So I'm talking a lot about scenarios. Well, scenario is a like very important concept of Taipy. It's just an instance of your problem. It's an instance, like a solution to your problem. So here will be that I'm going to change my day of prediction, and I want to create like different predictions for different days. And so I will create different scenarios with different days of predictions. For another problem, I will be able to change like different properties, and I will be able to create different scenarios. And then it's very easy to compare the different scenarios. So this is the scenario concept of Taipy. So like I said, you can do everything here. So with this graphical editor, you can like change the storage type, the path, your functions, you can create, edit, create links, and so on through Taipy Studio. But if you don't want to do this and configure it like this, you can in fact do the same thing, but with like Python. So with just normal Python functions. So the same thing as what I've done before with clean dataset and the initial dataset. Well, I can do it here. So creating a data node with some ID, it's a CSV, it has a path. Also the scope. So the scope, again, it's a Taipy concept. It just means here with global that initial dataset is shared by everyone, by every scenario, by every pipelines, by every task. I have just one unique initial dataset, which is not the case for day. As you can see, day doesn't have a scope, so it will be automatically a scope scenario, which means that it will be unique to just a scenario. So I can create different scenarios with different days of predictions. And in fact, the motivation behind it is to be able to really like save space in the disk, to be efficient, and to be able to create like these different scenarios with different data nodes. So I'm creating data nodes in Python. So I'm just going to scroll through it, creating a task, which is just, like I said, a Python function, input, output, a data node. And then I'm doing this, creating task, data nodes, and so on, creating a pipeline. And this pipeline, I'm putting it to my scenario. So this, what you see here, all this,
yeah. There's a slight gap between when you talk and when you move the screen. There's a kind of couple of seconds difference time-wise. So
okay. Well, I'm going to be a bit slower.
So
then.
Now we can see, of course, the data nodes, the task, and you can see the pipeline. So stay a bit longer so that the screen refreshes.
Okay. So yeah, you create 2 different tasks, the data nodes. So it's just another way to do it. So all of this code that I've done here, that I've selected, can be just done by this graphical editor that is Taipy Studio. So it's as you want, either Python, either graphical editor. But with Python, you are also able to dynamically create your pipelines, which is also great. Yeah, so config this or that. Now I'm going to, use this configuration in my main. So I've done it either graphically, either with Python, and I can use it. So in fact, this config here that you see is stored as a TOML file. In fact, it is stored like this. So it's just a TOML file with all your properties, and you are able to load this configuration in the main. So this is what I'm doing in order to load these graphical like pipelines, config.load, and then my configuration of my scenario is this one. So in order to create a scenario and to submit it, I will use this function. So create scenario with the scenario configuration with a name. So the name is optional. It's just for this use case. I'm creating a name. Then if you want to change a data node of your scenario, the syntax is always the same. It will be scenario.datanode.write with the new value date. So it can be JSON, it can be CSV, it can be SQL, it can be Mongo, it can be anything. The syntax is always the same, scenario.datanode.write with a date. And when you are done with what you want to modify in your scenario, you can just submit your scenario with tp.submit_scenario, and it will just execute all of your tasks, all of your pipelines. And if it can be run in parallel, it will be run in parallel, so your different tasks, in order to save time and resources. So this is what can be done automatically by Taipy. So all this kind of syntax that is always the same, being able to create different scenarios easily and submitting it in an efficient way. So here I have creating my scenario, and it has been submitted. So now I can just read my predictions. And to read some data node, it's always the same syntax, scenario.pipeline.datanode.read, and I'm reading it. And it can be a CSV, SQL, Mongo, Pickle, whatever. It's going to be always the same syntax. So Taipy Core gives some kind of framework to work with in order to be really easy to work with pipelines, with data nodes, and so on. Here in this loop, I'm just going to create 10 scenarios in this for loop. Normally, you should do it with Taipy GUI. So with like what I've shown, with a button create, it's going to create the scenario, then submit. Yeah, I'm doing it artificially.
Yeah, so typically this is the end user that will enter the date, different dates, and run the scenario for each date one at a time. So here, as Florian mentioned, this is artificial. We create a loop, so we create a scenario all at once, and we execute them with the submit here.
Yes. And so that I have created my 10 scenarios. I can get all of my scenarios like this. So with this Taipy function, In fact, we have a lot of different Taipy functions like
maybe
this.
one thing to say is that the create scenario that not only creates the scenario, but you also submit the scenario, right?
Yes, yeah. And this one here,
So they get executed.
True. So I'm getting all of my scenarios in a list here and just going through all of it to print my evaluation and then putting it into a data frame. So I'm just going to go a bit below, showing you the code for Taipy GUI. So at the end, I'm going to create a little application Taipy GUI to show my chart with the different metrics for my different predictions. And now we can run it and see what is happening. So it's going to create me all the different scenarios with all the jobs. In fact, a job is just a task. And then creating my Taipy GUI application with all of my scenarios and with all of my metrics. And if we go back to our code and see the logs, there's something really important to see. So I'm going back just at the top. Don't worry about this. Okay, I'm good. No, okay, yeah. So yeah. So I'm going to wait a little bit. And then what I want to show you is that this is my first scenario, in fact. So the 3 jobs of my first scenario, my 3 tasks: clean data, predict, and evaluate. And these 3 jobs are being completed. So they are done, like the functions are being completed, executed. And if I'm going back, so I'm just going to scroll a little bit here to the second scenario. So this one, this will be the second scenario. You will see that the clean data, my task clean data, is being skipped. And it is true for all the other scenarios. It is skipped, skipped, and skipped, and so on and so on. Because the change between the different scenarios is just the day of prediction. I'm just changing the day of prediction. So if we go back to our configuration, changing the day of prediction doesn't change anything about this task. So I'm not changing my initial dataset, so my clean data will always give me the same output clean dataset. So in fact, it's not really useful to do this clean data again and again and again for every scenarios. It's not something useful to do because initial dataset doesn't change. So Taipy will notice it and will automatically just skip this task. I'm not going to execute it. So in terms of performance and time and resources, well, this is really great for your application. And it's just an option. So you can just say that you want to turn it on or off, just like this. So if I want to turn it on, I'm doing to create skippable equals to true, or skippables equals to false. So false, true, if you want to be able to keep it or not automatically. So just like I said, you can.
It's okay. So we see it. Yeah, we see it now. Skippable. Can you go down a bit? Yeah, a bit fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see this skippable. Yeah, set to true. So it's just a parameter. So it's very easy to set up.
Yeah, true, false. I'm choosing true for this task. But if you have some kind of random task and you don't want it to be skipped automatically by Taipy, this is something also that you can do. Also, like what I've done in Python, so this, I can also export it as a terminal file and view it with my graphical editor. So if I'm done, if I created all of my different tasks, data nodes, and so on, I can just export this configuration in the terminal file, and then I can be able to also view it like this, so like with different data nodes tasks, but graphically. This is also something that you can do. So with this little application, I just wanted to show you the different concepts. So you have the scenarios, you have the scoping, so I can share data nodes between scenarios, tasks, and so on. You have also the parallelism that is just being taken care of by Taipy. You have the fact that you can skip tasks that are just redundant, but you want to do it again and again and again. Also, the way that it is organized with this graphical editor and with a different syntax, well, it just gives you this kind of framework that is really easy to work with. So you have all of these things ready to use with Taipy Core, basically. Also, we have a system of versioning. So it just means that, well, I'm able to show you it for you. In fact, oh, it's not this one, sorry. Okay, so this is the versioning. So in fact, you want maybe to be able to version the different applications. So you're changing your configuration, so your different data nodes, you add a data node, delete a data node, change a property, and so on. Maybe you want to be able to track these different changes that you are going to make to your application. And this is something that you can do with Taipy, creating different versions and being able to keep track of them. As a default way mode of executing your code, you're not going to save the scenarios of your previous runs. We're just going to delete the data of previous runs. But you can also, so this is in fact the development mode, where you're just going to create your application. We're not going to store your data. But you are able to create like different experiments. So in fact, we have like 3 modes: development mode, experiment mode, and then prediction mode. So development, you're not going to store your data. Experiment, we're going to store the data of your previous runs, and you can also create a version, like a number for your experiment, and then you can put this experiment version into prediction. So what I'm going to show you is that here I'm going to run my Python, well, my main.py in experiment mode. So I'm going to be able to store my data between 2 runs. And I'm going to say that this is, well, I don't know, 1.0. This is my version of my application, 1.0. And I'm going to run it. So this will just run your code. So with all the script completed, with all the scenarios, it's going to create this application that we have seen just before. So it's not really interesting, so I'm just going to skip it. Then I'm just going to do the same as before. So I'm going to rerun this same like experiment with the same version. And what you're going to see is that we're going to have, we are going to keep, in fact, the different scenarios that we have just done before. So you are going to store the information. Okay. And we can know this because of the first scenario. The first one was being completed before because we didn't have any scenario before. Now it's been skipped because this task has already been done in another experiment with the same version. And then this version, you can put it into prediction. So I'm like happy with my experiment. So now I want it to be in prediction. So I'm just going to write it, and now it's going to be into prediction mode. So we have this kind of different modes that you can play with. The goal is to be able to version the different pipelines, data nodes, like your different configurations. And like this, it's really easy to keep track of the changes. And in fact, Taipy will notice you if you have changes in your configuration. So I can also show you this. This is not this one. Yep. So I'm going to okay, 2.0. And so again, every scenario is being completed and so on. This is not really interesting for us. What is interesting is that I'm going to do the same thing, but change, for example, my path of my data node. So it's a CSV, and I'm going to create something like this, which is not true, but we'll see the difference. So going to do the same thing, Python main.py experiment.0.
We have not really seen what you changed, Florian.
Okay. Well, I just changed the path of one of my data nodes, which was a CSV. So changing this parameter. And Taipy Core will notice me that one parameter has been changed for a data node. So the path has been changed from dataset.csv to dataset. So yeah, Taipy Core is able to have like different versions, being able to keep track of your changes and also notify you when you have a change in the configuration and when there's maybe conflict between 2 versions. So this is a really complete description of Taipy Core and Taipy GUI. So Taipy GUI with all the visual elements, interactiveness, callbacks, decimator, long callback, and so on. So everything in low code, and you can create your application very easily like this. And then normally for the backend, you will use Taipy Core with all of your pipelines, your model. So it can be machine learning, optimization, just data flow. So you create these different data nodes, different tasks, different pipelines into a scenario. So that you can do graphically just with Taipy Studio. And then you're going to be able to use it in your application. So you're using Taipy GUI and Taipy Core together, you're creating a full application really easily. You can put directly into production if you want to. So this is the goal of Taipy behind it. And if you want to know more about Taipy, you can just go to our website. So we have like taipy.io. So I'm going to show you taipy.io, which is here. And then you can also go to our documentation. So here will be the documentation, taipy.io with different elements. Then you have the documentation with the getting started with the full, well, with everything that you need to know about Taipy. So we will be like delighted to see your results and your different demos applications with Taipy. And I think I'm done with everything that I wanted to show you.